Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. by recognizing the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. Excuse me. We respectfully acknowledge that the municipality of Brighton is located on the Mississauga and Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga. The Council of the Municipality of Brighton respectfully acknowledges that the Mississauga Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. The municipality of Brighton continues to stand in solidarity with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Brighton, our council, and our citizens continue to show deep concern for the humanitarian toll the invasion has and will continue to take on Ukraine and its citizens. Our council also extends sympathies to the victims of the recent attacks in Saskatchewan. A number of people have lost their lives, and I would ask that everyone take a moment of silence in respect for those victims. Thank you. We begin with the approval of the agenda, and this was signed by Councillor Anderson, who had to step out, so I'll need a mover. The motion reads that Council approve the September 6, 2022 Council agenda as presented. Is there a mover? Councillor Rowley, and it is seconded by Councillor Bateman. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. Are there any announcements this evening? Councillor LeBlanc.
Your Worship, I would like to announce at the last meeting, I'll announce it again, the pancake breakfast, which is a fundraiser for the sign, but not necessarily the sign. Is more for security, maintenance, and upkeep of the sign for the number of years that's going to take to do it, and to make sure the sign is protected. Yeah, at Carrington, on
That's
the
on
17th of September.
Thank you. That starts at 8 o'clock.
It starts at 9.
9.
But all of us are to get there by 7 in the morning. Start prepping.
Thank you. It is 6:33 p.m. and Councillor Anderson has joined us in the chambers. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. The first announcement I'd like to make is that on behalf of the local food bank and Sunny Days, we appreciate all of the financial support that we received this summer through Concerts in the Park. Although I don't have any hard and fast numbers, I'm sure it will be a great shot in the arm for both organizations this year. Once again, Brighton is a generous community.
It sure is. Thank you for that. Any other announcements? Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Your Worship, and also the corn roast for raising money for the library. Apparently, it raised very close to $500. And the donor, the other individual, is going to be delivering 6 notebook pads to the cadre in the library for the kids to use for notebooks and for reading books. And they'll be delivered this week.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
There we go. Thank you for waiting for me to arrive. On another note, I had a great weekend and enjoyed my visit to Brighton Speedway, one of Brighton's tourist attractions and destinations, and it was great. I was a guest of Quinte Broadcasting, and my family got to go. Some of the family got to go, and it was great. So thank you to all of them.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Anyone else? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. Maybe this is one that you should have made, but maybe on behalf of council, we want to wish all our students going back to school, all of our teachers, a great stress-free, hopefully COVID-free year. It's nice to see kids hopefully experience a little bit more of the norm. So maybe that should have been your announcement, but it just came to my head. Anyway, seeing
Okay.
how you know what first day of school goes for some people, but yeah, let's wish them all the best this year.
I can't speak for every teacher, but at least one in my household had a relatively stress-free day, so. Any other announcements this evening? I would like to introduce everyone to our new Director of Public Works, Leslie Whiteman. If you could just stand up briefly, Leslie, and give a wave to the crowd. Oh, wait. Leslie brings a wealth of experience, including international and locally from places including Pickering and Peterborough near us. Leslie is a professional engineer, and we appreciate the service you have brought the last couple of weeks, and of course, the service you will bring for many, 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 many years to come. Thank you, Leslie. We appreciate your attendance tonight and your joining us for service here in Brighton. That takes us to the adoption of the minutes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, second by Councillor Bateman, that Council adopt the August 22nd, 2022 Council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council adopt the August 24th, 2022 planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. There is no statutory public meeting this evening. That brings us to delegations. Council will hear 2 delegations this evening. Delegates have 10 minutes to provide council with their information. It is noted that language, content, and conduct must remain respectful at all times. Council will be provided with an opportunity to ask questions of clarification from the delegation representative based on the information that they have presented. Council is reminded that this is not an opportunity to engage in debate with the delegate nor advance a public policy position. Delegates are reminded that council does not make decisions during the delegation portion of the meeting. So the first delegation is Lynn Gladman on behalf of the Brighton Stockings and Santa Sacks for Seniors. Lynn, if you wouldn't mind approaching the microphone, there is a button on your right. Oh, you got it going. Awesome.
Linda showed me.
Awesome. You have the floor.
Hi. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I had taken on the Brighton Stocking and Santa Sacks for Seniors because the girl that started it unfortunately is ill, and with COVID and everything, we didn't know what to do or how to do it. So this year, we are hoping for 2 things. A place to actually organize the stockings and take all the donations from all the people that, after we put the flyers out and that, and somewhere it can be safe and we can have access to it. Last year it was my basement covered in stuff. Also, we lost a very good donator last year of $1,000, and that helped us get through the rest of what we need to buy for the homes and stuff. So I'm asking for if anyone knows a place that we could store the stuff and then assemble it. We may have one, but I'm not quite sure yet. And perhaps some financial aid if we need it. If we don't, it will just carry on for the next year. To make all the seniors happy.
Thank you, Lynn. I will turn the floor over to members of council for questions if they have any questions of clarification. There are none noted. We do have correspondence, so we will be reading your correspondence later in the meeting and making a decision based on that correspondence.
Good.
Do you have a question? Okay. So thank you.
Most people know
Yeah.
how it works.
I think so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Motion before me reads, is moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Blanc. The council received the delegation from Linda Gladman on behalf of Brighton Stockings and Santa Sacks for Seniors, introduction of the volunteer program. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thanks, Lynn. And as I said, we'll be reading your correspondence later in the meeting. The next delegation comes from Joanne Filatico regarding the water main connection and development agreement in Gosport. Joanne, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you tonight again. I'm here this evening to ask for an amendment to the cost-sharing percentage in our development agreement. At the Planning Council meeting on July 20th, 2022, Mayor Ostrander read the motion that we work with staff to discuss cost sharing. After corresponding with Bob Castleman, I was informed that the percentage split 65-35 was incorporated within a development agreement approved by council, and that only council can amend the subject agreement. So we are back. I gave all the figures. You can see our final cost has jumped up to $99,232. The cost of the fire hydrant, $9,718.60. And at the council meeting of July 20th, 2022, members of council were open to removing the cost of the fire hydrant from the total bill so that we would not be paying 65% of the cost for the community fire hydrant. I'm now asking council to formally remove the cost of the hydrant from our portion of the bill. I've read Mr. Walsh's memo to council that the municipality will pay for the relocation of water lines at 29 Price Street West and 44 Bay Street West, but it doesn't mention the line at 430 Lambton Street. And I just want to get clarification about what the municipality will pay for. Removing that fire hydrant brings the shared cost down to $89,513. 65% of that cost equals $58,183.76. So I just wanted to make clear what we're discussing is the cost of the water main. I reviewed all the council meetings on YouTube. July 2022 meeting about the 24-minute mark, the deputy mayor asked questions about connection charges. And I want to make it sure we understand we're not debating the cost to connect, or in the case of the Price Street West property, to reconnect. I don't know what those costs are. After paying $58,000 for the water main, we'll have to pay additional costs to actually connect to it. So our building budgets were drawn up using the figures provided by council, and we even added 10% to be on the safe side and didn't come near this amount. So I'm not sure if we would have moved forward if we had been given this amount at the beginning, and we don't even know what it's going to cost. So in order to meet all the conditions for granting the severance, we've spent $114,800 to date. For that, we have 3 vacant lots. This is another area where treating residents like developers doesn't work. We were forced to demolish our homes in order to get the severance, so we didn't get to use our property this summer. We agreed to costs based on your estimates, trusting you knew what was required. We entered into this agreement in August of 2021, but the water main wasn't put out for bids until August of 2022. We're left with no option but to pay for a water main or some other connection in order to build. Even if we camp in tents on our empty lots, we still have to pay a water bill every 3 months because the service is available to us in that area. We have no way to generate extra income other than going on the Gosport Facebook page with a link to a GoFundMe website asking for help to pay for community water main. At the August 18th, 2021 meeting at the 21:27-minute mark, Josh Berry said, sometimes we ask developers to upgrade the infrastructure to service the development. You are asking us to upgrade the infrastructure to service the community. At approximately 22 minutes, Councillor Tadman asked if we were considered developers. Josh Berry replied, it is technically a development. Currently, from what I understand, it is on private services. So as part of the redevelopment, they are requesting to connect to public services. Under the Planning Act, we can ask for infrastructure upgrades. I read that stupid 165-page Ontario Planning Act. I couldn't find the section for this. My planning consultant couldn't find it. I reached out to the provincial government and they didn't respond. And I've read the recommendations on tonight's agenda from Paul Walsh, and I thank him for listing the sections involved. The one thing I've learned in all of this is I will never recommend planner as a career choice. Our property was not on private services. We had 1 water connection and 2 sewer connections. We applied for another water connection because we had 2 lots and 2 addresses, but we're told we had to get a severance to have another connection. So it was impossible for us to have the 3 existing homes on our 1 lot serviced equally in any other way than to apply for a severance, which then made you look at us as developers. In the report from Paul Walsh he will be discussing tonight, he mentions that the 2 neighbors on Lambton and Bay Street are connected to the Price Street West water main. Wouldn't it have just been easier to have had us connect to the Price Street water main in the same way as our neighbors? One of the lots will be reconnected to the Price Street water main anyway. Only 2 of the lots connect to the new water main. At the July 2022 meeting, a delegate appeared discussing safety issues and installation of sidewalks. Mayor Ostrander said at the 11:40 minute mark, the developer was paying 50% of the sidewalk cost. You want me to pay 65% of the cost of a water main because I am a developer, but another developer is only paying 50% of the cost of sidewalks. The decision to charge residents to pay the majority of the cost for a water main that is property of the township and serves not only themselves but their neighbor sets a dangerous precedent. You have a duty to the people you represent to negotiate fair and just agreements, and I have the same responsibility to the people I represent. At the August 18, 2021 Planning Council meeting, Mayor Ostrander said at the 35.49 minute mark, if the applicant feels they are being unduly put upon by staff, they can make application through council for relief if that's the case. That is the case. Before I conclude my remarks, I just want to say that I felt very hurt and very angry throughout this process. I realize today that this is because I have approached this as a personal concern to me. This is about my home and my future in the community. Mr. Walsh has approached this from a purely business perspective. From a business perspective, everything he has said has been correct. In this case, however, he's not dealing with a business, but with 3 families who want to build retirement homes on their family property. The deputy mayor had pointed out in a previous meeting how the rules are made for developers and that when an individual does this, it's harder to understand how to take this. I'm not a business. I don't have a planning or engineering or construction background. I'm not familiar with council protocols. My work background is law enforcement. I'm just a constituent who wants a home with running water and a flush toilet. It would be helpful if you would communicate with me on that level. I am respectfully requesting that council approve adjusting the cost sharing agreement to reflect a more equitable split of the cost or to acknowledge we are residents and should not be made to bear the cost of an infrastructure upgrade. Thank you, and I did that in under 10 minutes.
And so I thank you. Thank you, Ms. Filatico. We appreciate that. I'm going to turn the floor over to council for questions of clarification, but before I do, I'm going to ask one myself. About 2/3 of the way down page 1 of your information that you provided to council for this, you say our building budgets were drawn up using figures provided by council. We even added 10% and still didn't get anywhere near the almost $60,000.
Correct.
Are you willing to share with council what you did budget for this process?
I budgeted another 10% on top of the 19,000. Actually, my builder told me to budget $30,000.
So you've budgeted in on or about $30,000.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Questions from members of council, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So we're being asked to reconsider the cost sharing. And I think my question kind of is similar to what yours was about the amount. I'm curious to know what cost sharing percentage is seen as, I guess, beneficial or is desired by yourself, if that makes any sense. Sorry.
I would-
wondering where you would like to land. Where do you feel comfortable?
Okay, I'd like a 50-50 split.
Okay, thank you.
I just would think it's fair for both sides.
A 50-50 split after we remove the fire hydrant and after we reconsider some of the water main costs.
Well, the fire hydrant, yes, you would agree to remove that. And then when I've read through Paul Walsh's memo for this evening, he talks about that they're responsible for the connections for the neighboring households.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to Mr. Walsh's report.
Yeah, I know I'm sort of out of order, but
No, you're not.
I didn't know whatever way to put this.
No, that you've done it absolutely the correct way. It's fine. We can't make a decision out of a delegation anyway, so it's good that
Yes.
there's a staff report before us. so we can have a more fulsome discussion at that point and make a decision on this request.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you, Your Worship. Did I hear, through you, Your Worship, did I hear correctly that you've already spent $114,000?
Yes, sir, I have, and I can provide a spreadsheet of all the expenses so far.
So you hired professionals to do all this, engineers and everything?
Yeah, I don't have the background for this. And when I contacted the Township of Brighton in 2019, they advised me to hire a planning consultant company. So that's what I did, and I hired the planning consultant company. And then I had to satisfy the needs of the Lower Trent Conservation Authority and have an elevation survey done because of the flood line. I've had to satisfy all their requirements. I had to hire an engineer for a site servicing plan. That was several $1,000s. It's in total, I actually did a spreadsheet last week to figure out how much I've spent to date for my 3 vacant lots. Demolition, that was a condition of the granting the severance. That was $52,000 for demolition.
Thank you both. Councillor Rowley.
Once again, just for clarification, the dollar amount that we're looking at to at some point cost share is the 89,513. Is that the total bill, and that's what we're considering later on after Mr. Walsh's report?
I didn't memorize Mr. Walsh's report, but it's in his report.
I think that's the right amount.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other? Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
Thank you. And you quoted an amount of 58,183.76 that would be your share as of right.
After the removal of the hydrant at the 65%.
Right. And I think I understand that both of the homes that are going up on Algon Street already will be able to be serviced by the pipe that's running along there. Is that correct?
Are you asking?
I was asking
Ms.
Joanne.
Filatico?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have no idea about Elgin Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems to me I read that anyways, and it's the one that the home that's going on Lambton Street that needs the upgrade with the pipe.
Yeah, 427 Lambton does not have a connection.
Okay,
27, the 3 lots are 27A Price Street West, 27B Price Street West, and 427 Lambton Street. So 27A Price Street West had a connection to the Price Street water main. 27B Price Street West did not have a connection to the Price Street West water main, and 427 Lambton does not have a connection because there is no Lambton water main.
right.
But I guess if I build it, they will come.
If you have to build it.
Yeah.
Anyone else for clarification purposes? Okay, Joanne, I'm going to read the motion that receives your delegation. We will be discussing this further during Mr. Walsh's report coming up under 9.3 in the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your information. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council receive the delegation from Joanne Filatico regarding an amendment to the cost sharing percentage in our development agreement. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Madam Clerk, are you aware of any citizens' comment this evening? No, thank you. Brings us to staff reports. Our first report is with regard to MAD request for advertising. Director Whitfield, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Maybe just something quick.
Go ahead.
May I suggest to council that in the future that these go through our communication, our our manager of economic development and communication rather than coming to council for these decisions. But other than that, I have nothing else to highlight. Thanks.
You're welcome. That's a good suggestion, and hopefully everybody remembers to put a budget line item in so that we don't have to have these small little items decided at a council meeting. Yeah. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, seconded by Councilor Blanc. The council, nope. I have a motion moved by Councilor Tadman, seconded by Councilor Bateman. The council support the advertising in the MAD Message Yearbook in the amount of $299. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to development charges indexing. Director Whitfield, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, seconded by Councilor LeBlanc. The council authorizes staff to increase Schedule C to bylaw 089-2019 by 17.17% in accordance with Statistics Canada quarterly non-residential building construction price statistics, Table 18-10-0135-01 second quarter. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to report to request to revise and approve development agreement for the extension of services at Lambton and Price Streets. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight? Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councilor LeBlanc, seconded by Councilor Rowley. The council receives a staff report dated September 6, 2022 regarding a request from George Yanoff, Joanne Filatico, and Richard Yanoff to revise a consent development agreement with the municipality pertaining to shared costing for the extension of services, and that council adopt a motion that the existing consent development agreement regarding cost sharing not be amended, except that the fire hydrant be made the exclusive cost to the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? Deputy Mayor,
I have three questions. Am I allowed to ask them all?
why not?
Okay, so just three questions. The first one is how many households will be allowed or be able to connect this upgrade? Is there an easier way to connect? We've heard of, coming from a different road, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And then if we went with a 50-50 split, how much would that be? How much would the cost be? Just we're all clear.
Director Walsh.
To the mayor, to council, to those three questions. The question of the number of houses are going to benefit from the water main, not coming to mind any other houses than the vacant lots that are being serviced by it. There might be some opportunity to the west, but it's been a while since I've been out to the site, and I haven't really accounted for what's on the west side. May have to rely here on Mr. John Gooding, our manager of capital works, who've put a lot of time in on this project to answer some of those detailed questions.
Mr. Gooding, anything to add?
Yeah, through the mayor to council. The requirement to connect those two lots is because their existing lines run in the same trench as the new proposed water main. So it's basically due to conflict is the reason why we have to switch them over to the new main. Further that though, it also does benefit the main that you have additional users to provide more draw to that line. But the intention was just to connect those two, and that was discovered, I believe, when they called for locates to demolish the house that exposed the gas line and those two existing services that weren't known when they did the engineering. So they would only be those two lots, and then the fire hydrant at the end for flushing purposes. The other thing I'll note just while I'm here is the cost of works estimate included sanitary works as well, which wouldn't be part of the water main. So the numbers need to be adjusted accordingly for that to remove, because those would be 100% the proponent's cost, not as part of the cost sharing agreement that was for purpose for the water main.
Your follow-up?
Just to follow up, I think myself, and I imagine most of council wants to know what a bottom line would be. If we're, we can play with, percentages, but it'd be good to have an idea of what it is we'd be agreeing to.
Did you get an answer to your question of is there an easier way?
I think my understanding is this is this is just kind of what has to be done.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. It's really the cost. I think there's something in the report we've heard from Joanne. I'd just like to have, and then we were hearing that some of it has to be borne 100% by them. But I'd like to know what if we adjusted it. I guess what amount are we looking at adjusting, or what percentage are we looking to apply to? That would be helpful.
Director?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have those numbers offhand. We have the gross number of the lowest bid at $87,816. And hearing from Mr. Gooding that is the total cost of works. So we'd have to break out from that total amount what is exclusively water oriented, which original agreement just had the municipality sharing upsizing of the water main from the minimum to 150 mils. And that the rest of the cost would be borne by the landowners. So even though we're doing 65-35 split as per the agreement currently, it applies to only a portion of those costs. The rest of the costs would be borne by the developers, Mr. Gooding has pointed out. So we'd have to get back to council on those numbers if a follow-up email would be sufficient.
Any other questions, members of council? Councilor LeBlanc?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, for those questions. One thing, from going from Price, and one home was connected and one probably was connected from that house to the other house. You have a 250 millimeter main on Price Street. Did anybody do a Dramium curve of the water flow capacity to make sure that it couldn't supply the 3 homes from there? Because you got 90 PSI, you're going to drop it down to 40. So that would give you somewhere around 5,600 liters a minute. My roughly calculation doing that.
Mr. Gooding?
Through the mayor to council or LeBlanc is that might be plausible. However, our operating license wouldn't permit it. So we looked at, I spoke to the engineer with Dual Engineering, and he mentioned that the reason why they went from 50 millimeter to 150 is at a cul-de-sac, they allow a 50 millimeter loop. My opinion is that's incorrect, because if you read our license and the forms we have to fill out in order to amend it, in order to put an extension of the water main, they allow for 75 millimeter main minimum size without fire protection, 150 width. And we would never permit a water main without fire protection. So 150 should have been actually the minimum, not 50 millimeters as part of this exercise. So that's why staff's made the recommendation that's fairly generous that we've offered to provide or to share some of that cost, even though and further after reviewing it again is maybe perhaps we shouldn't have, being that they would have had to put a 150 millimeter end anyway to extend the water main in order to service this lot. Perhaps some of the only cost sharing would be is to relocate the existing water mains or lines, which we did find 2 water valves in the boulevard. So there is 2 separate lines with the shut off at the street, not a daisy chain of connections on a 19 millimeter surface.
We also allow easements to go across properties so that piping and stuff can go, because we have them in all our different subdivisions, so it doesn't really have to come from there. I read the regulations. I also want to thank you for looking at the question I asked, why is she paying for firefighting for the fire hydrant that they removed it? That was really good, because the fire hydrant would be shared by all the streets and all the homes there too. So it should be a shared cost for lower insurance. But if the flow, has anybody did a Dramium calculation to find out what the flow, the sufficient flow without putting in the new main to supply the 3 homes? That's my question.
No, I don't believe that was part of the scope of work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Tadman.
I have a hard time understanding why we're calling this a development when there's three different people building a retirement home now that they have the severances. The other thing that I was thinking about this morning, I remember when the water went to Gosport, and I remember my dad in particular, because he had quite a bit of land and was paying a lot of taxes, but it was all incorporated at that time that all water lines that ran through Gosport, wherever you own property, you paid towards the upkeep of those. So in the past, And I remember the people that owned the cottages at that time, they would have been paying on their tax bill for the line that was through at the time. So it's a different time now, and there's not that many people on this street, as you probably know, but I do know that there's Mrs. Maxwell who lives across the street who is obviously hooked up. She's on Lambton, so she'd obviously be hooked up to this 50 meter line. And now because somebody wants to build a house on Lambton, all of a sudden they have to enlarge the pipe. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think they have to pay anything, and that's where I stand on that.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc.
Through your chair, the question I'd like to pose is that the length of time and the changes in the design and the changing with the municipality going back and forth, how much more cost has it added to the residents that want to build a home? Demolition was 52, but how much of the rest of it was added to the cost and how much longer? And did the town use her engineers to get questions out of this? And if they did, should she be reimbursed for the cost that the town used her engineer to get questions back for what we had to be done?
So the engineered drawings only showed her requirements, not the additional connections or the connections to the other lots. So it was really solely just to her property. With regards to cost, it's difficult to provide that. However, the range of bids we got back was for $87,000 to $337,000. And some of the challenges is the unknowns, whether it be dewatering or conflicts. There's a gas line that runs parallel as well in this boulevard. Unfortunately, my understanding is QBT is also the contractor that demolished the house. So they're familiar with the property. We're able to provide a fair price, which worked out to approximately $20,000 per lot to service, which is very reasonable, even in last year's prices or previous years.
So I think the only question before us at this stage is, are we sticking with 65-35, or is council in the mood to negotiate? And really not a negotiation. Is council in the mood to swing those numbers? That's the question. Councillor Rowley.
I am certainly of the mindset to negotiate.
So the request is 50-50. Our position is 65-35.
And if Joanne is happy with 50-50, I would support that.
Go ahead.
I heard a price of, the price just keeps going up. I just heard something like 300 and something thousand. And how can this landowner agree to something she doesn't even have a clue what she's going to end up paying?
So I think the 337,000 was a range of bids, right? So 87 was the low bid and 337 was the high bid.
But there could be other costs in between there, as he said.
Right. And the longer we delay, the more those costs will go up because prices go up.
Or they've
and-
already gone up.
Well, likely. Councillor Anderson.
Has this type of negotiation happened recently? I mean, in the last 4 years, when a development like this, this is not your typical development, but have we had to deal with a similar situation?
Director.
To Mayor to Council, it's not uncommon if there's a service that's going to benefit a wide area that there is some cost sharing. Usually it's through front-end financing or agreement under the Development Charges Act, for example, or something parallel. You may remember something on Singleton. You may remember the Harbor Point Pond. That was a cost sharing situation. So it does happen, and there are mechanisms for doing that. And it varies. You have to just work out who's going to benefit and who's going to pay. Taxpayer doesn't want to, subsidize a developer, and developer doesn't want to subsidize a taxpayer. So you have to work something out.
Well,
Is this a follow-up?
I get a follow-up?
Go ahead.
So based on that information, I would feel more comfortable to agree with Council Raleigh that a cost sharing or a cost split should be looked at because of the time element and the confusion over whether it's a subdivision or not. It was quite clear to us, I think, when it was brought forward that it was brought forward as a subdivision, and I don't think we knew much about why then, but
I just,
I
sorry,
agree.
Councillor Anderson, I just need to back up there. This was never a subdivision agreement. This was always 3 lots on a piece of property in Gosport, but with 3 different owners. But it is a development agreement, and it's certainly not the first time this council has entered into a development agreement with a developer that is a small family unit or one person. We often enter into development agreements for one house or
Okay.
1 or 2 houses.
So, excuse me for saying that then. So I would agree with Councillor Rowley that we should agree to that type of a negotiation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And I just wanted to comment, none of us want to be developers or called developers, but when we buy a piece of property, and I know this from experience, and we're going to put a home on it, we're developing the property. And a few years ago, when I bought my lot, there was a question whether there were services there or whether I'd have to bring them in and I'd have to pay the full amount of the cost. And when they found out there were services there, if they weren't good enough, I'd have to pay the full cost. And I had to pay development charges and I had to hire an engineer and all of these things. And it was the cost of me building a home on that property. And now at the end of the day, I have the value of the home. So a developer, maybe not, but I was developing property. So I understand the lingo here and why we are where we are. But again, I think there's possibility that other people, some other families could benefit from this. So that's why I don't think that they should. I think 50-50 would be a reasonable cost sharing.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc.
If to your worship, to Mr. Gooding. So you have a bid of 87,000 plus one of 300,000, correct? So what is in the bidding process? I was a contractor too. Sometimes you go low, fully knowing there's already unknowns on the property. So if there is any extras, is that added to the cost of the 50-50, or can this lady say, this is 87,000, we're going to share it 50-50. If there are any unknown, because she doesn't know if there's any unknown, we should have all the drawings, we should have all the maps and where all our utilities are. Who bores the extra cost on top of that 87,000? Or is it a shared 50-50?
So the way the tender was written is with the line items were per meter, because we don't know exactly where in the street and how far you have to come in. So I couldn't do a lump sum. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that as well with some of the water mains like the service lines from the water main benefiting another resident or whatnot. So I expect the numbers to vary. And the other thing is there's a separate item for restoration. So whether the trench, they get lucky and there's no water issues and they have a 3-meter wide trench versus a 5-meter if they have to dig further in the road and whatnot. So there's a lot of variabilities. The one thing I probably want clarification on is if we're amending, or if the recommendation ends up amending the agreement from the percentages only, but we keep the wording in the same as written in that agreement. It just to make sure that costs such as the service lines that come in from the main or the sanitary works aren't captured, because those would be 100% borne by anybody who provides services to their property, even if it's services across the frontage.
Yeah, I think it's just the the public works we're talking about, less the hydrant.
I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, so I believe what council is discussing is just amending the number from 65-35 to 50-50, but no other wording in the agreement.
Correct.
I'm going to go over to Councillor Bateman. Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think that's what the delegation was requesting. So I'm in support of what they've asked for in that 50-50 split based on.
Let's go.
Okay, so is anyone not in favor of a 50-50 split? We're all good? You're not in favor of a 50-50 split? You don't think they had to pay for anything?
That's right.
Right, okay.
That's good.
Go ahead.
If that's the wording, okay, she agreed to 50-50. But the thing is, the overcost, it should stay at the 87,000. She pays for any connection that she has to do with her house, like any normal people have done, like the deputy mayor has done and everybody else has done. when they bring the water main, they pay for that. I mean, the water line to come from wherever we connect from the property line, the town property to theirs. But what happens if the project goes to 300,000? Let's say the one developer bidder was right.
My understanding is we have a bid for $87,000. Is that a firm bid?
No, it's
Mr.
based on
Gooding?
estimates and the unit prices that they provided. So there is some adjustment that, the water main's further out or they can amend it. Now, I think what you're proposing is perhaps a municipality taking on the construction risk, which is not typical for for projects such as this, that we're not being the lead on necessarily. It's really driven by this development.
So I've already read the motion. Councillor LeBlanc, it's your motion. Councillor Valley, you've seconded it. My suggestion is, given the discussion, that we amend the second portion of the motion, which currently reads, and that council adopt a motion that the existing consent development agreement regarding cost sharing not be amended, except that the fire hydrant be made the exclusive cost to the municipality. My suggestion is that that line be amended to read, and that council adopt a motion that the existing consent development agreement regarding cost sharing be amended to cost share 50% to the municipality, 50% to the developer. I know people may object to that, but to the developer, except that the fire hydrant be made exclusive cost of the municipality. Is that going to work for is that going to work for a discussion point?
It would work, but we also have to say that, like, she's borrowing money. And the thing is, all of a sudden she's borrowed, let's say she borrows 40,000, which is her half, 43,000. Then all of a sudden it comes to 300,000. Now she's got to go get another 310,000 or 160,000 she's got to borrow to be her half of that 300,000. So that's where I have a problem. As long as it would say that it's capped at 87,000 and it's 50-50, the rest, the infrastructure that's there, that should be there, we should know about it. There should be no more surprises. If there is surprises, the municipality should bore it.
I certainly understand your point of view that you want to cap this because of the discussion time, but my opinion is that we shouldn't be implicating the rest of the wastewater users for an additional many hundreds of thousands of dollars, even if it is spread over many people, for 3 homes. And I know Councillor Tabman doesn't think we should charge any of this to the property owners, but at the end of the day, I think a 50-50 split is what the property owners have asked for. I don't think they've asked for an upset limit that I could see in the information that they presented. I appreciate what Councillor Blanc's wanting to do here, but is there a want for council to put an upset limit on this? Go ahead.
One of the comments that Mr. Gooding made as well is that QBT, who tendered the bid of 87,000, is familiar with the property as far as they did the demolition. So my guess is they would have an idea as to already what's there. I'm sure if they had to take everything, they would have a better idea than maybe Neptune, I would think, right? As far as
I would think so.
I would think so.
We have to
It might be a little bit of flex in cost,
Can't guarantee
but I
anything.
think if Joanne is agreeing to that, I'm still happy with 50-50.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question for the Director of Finance. Who pays for the portion of the municipality's portion?
Director?
Through you, Mayor, that would be paid by the water users.
Thank you both. Any further discussion on this? So I need approval from the mover and the seconder to make the amendment that I suggested. Director Walsh.
Just for staff clarification, the 50-50 is changing those specific numbers in the agreement from 65-35 to 50-50 and exclude the hydrant costs.
That is correct. And I will read it again once I make the amendment. So the second line now reads, and that council adopt a motion that the existing consent development agreement regarding cost sharing be amended to cost share 50% to the municipality and 50% to the developers, except that the fire hydrant be made the exclusive cost to the municipality of Brighton. Councillor Tadman.
May I have a recorded vote, please? I still maintain this seems to be the whole weight of this. This is going on one person because the other two are on Elgin Street. And the pipe was fine. And it serviced, well, there's only the one other house right in that little section there. But over the years, they paid for that pipe. Somebody discovered that we need the fire hydrant when this all came up. That wasn't the fault of this person who wants to build a home. And so we've raised that, but I still can't get it into my head that she has to pay for that pipe. So I'd like to have a recorded vote.
I will ask that the clerk have a recorded vote once I'm sure that everybody's had their opportunity to speak. Anything further from members of council? Madam Clerk, a recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Tad.
No.
Deputy Mayor Laura Connect,
Yes.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Because of no cap, no.
it's not working. Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes,
It's carried.
thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, for bringing that report to us. And thank you, Ms. Filatico, for bringing not just a problem, but a helpful solution. We hope this works out for you.
Okay, can I have 2 more seconds of your time? Because when
Council, is that okay? with council? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just with regards to Paul Walsh's memo this evening, in his analysis section, he has in section 11, the municipality shall pay 100% of the actual costs associated with service connections, reconnections for works that in the municipality's sole judgment are unrelated to the owner's proposal. Does that still stand? And he's now referring to 29 Price Street West, which was never in the quotation for the water main bid. And it doesn't cite 430 Lambton now. It's got 29 Price Street and 44 Bay Street. And 430 Lambton's not included now.
Mr. Gooding?
The bids are unit price per connection, so per water valve, per meter of line. If we find other connections that connect to this water main as the works occur, we have the unit prices to make that connection. It doesn't have to specifically be stated in the contract.
Thank you.
And so the municipality will be paying 100% of those costs. Does that stand?
I'm getting a head nod I got a head nod from Mr. Walsh earlier. I want to make sure that that's still the case before
Mayor, just confirming that any of the costs that are of a benefit to the municipality would be borne by the municipality. And that's a quote right from the existing agreement, and that won't change.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like not an engineer or anything. Like I'm in the same confused ballpark everybody else is.
I understand. Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that it's at some point I guess it won't be until we actually start constructing this thing, I can actually get a more of a bill that says, okay, this we pay, this you pay, this is 50-50. You know, like it's very hard to budget this way. And yeah, I am worried, like if this thing goes to $300,000, I don't know what I'm going to do. I honestly don't know. At this point, I really would like to see a change in this process. That when you're dealing with situations like this, you're presenting better information to the people, because like I don't know if you had said to me it's going to be between 88,000 and 300, a possible $300,000, would I have done a demolition of my property? So like maybe these things work with an actual developer who they're just going to pass on these costs. It's costs of doing business. But for a resident, I don't have unlimited funds. The process itself, I think, could do with a little tweaking, because it's been incredibly difficult. And just the way the information was shared, I actually, I felt I had no choice in some of these matters in order to meet the conditions of severance. And, asking people to demolish their home as a condition of granting a severance, that could have been amended. You could have given us the option of, when all these conditions are met, you agree to demolish within 30 days or 60 days or something like that. It's just something I would hope you would consider, because like I lost my entire summer there this year for no reason. And, you talk about the developer and the taxpayer. Well, this is like one of those great cases where I am the developer and I am the taxpayer. So if I could just ask you at some point, I know like you've got a lot to focus on with the upcoming elections and that, but at some point when everything settles back down again, if you could possibly revisit this so someone else doesn't have a similar experience, I would really appreciate that. And I know that those people would appreciate that as well. But other than that, I would like to thank you for your time this evening. I know you have a very busy schedule ahead of you, and we are grateful for all the consideration you've given us this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Filatico. I see Director Walsh is making some pretty significant notes, and we're sorry you had a bad customer experience, quite frankly. I don't think that's ever
Well, it's not
our wish.
The people are great. Like I have never been like, mistreated in any way. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I understand to some extent we are a little different situation. But, there are still some vacant lots being bought up down in Gosport. And, I just want anybody to have a better experience.
And I will say, one of the reasons that staff does ask people to go out and get their own planning consultant is in part to help protect you from these concerns. So I think it's unfortunate that I'm not blaming anyone. I don't mean to point fingers, but I think it's unfortunate that your consultant didn't on your behalf offer these requests to our staff in terms of 30 days or 60 days.
Well,
because
sir,
I
even gave this to my lawyer, and my lawyer told me they have you over a barrel.
Yeah,
You have to agree. Like this was presented as this was a done deal. This wasn't presented as this is a negotiable thing. And you know what? Maybe somebody in business or in this field, they would know that they could negotiate or go back and forth. But
and perhaps your lawyer should have known that too. I don't think that was the best information you received.
Well, I'll tell him you said that.
Okay. All right. So thank you. I appreciate your comments. I saw Mr. Walsh taking quite a lot of notes. So I think there will be some in the future more dialogue so that people are able to protect themselves a little bit better. I'm sorry that you've felt that you've had this experience. I'm glad that you had a good experience with the staff, but the process is part and parcel of what we offer as a service, and it wasn't a good experience from your end, and we don't want that to happen. So I appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that takes us to notices of motion and motions. First motion is moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Mayor Ostrander. Whereas Brighton is a community with a significant military population, and whereas military personnel are from time to time released from their duties for medical reasons, and whereas military personnel are attached to healthcare through the Canadian Armed Forces, which ceases after the date of military release, and whereas released military personnel are unable to register with Healthcare Connect until after their release date, providing a healthcare gap. And whereas the notice for release dates are well in advance of the actual date of release from the Canadian Armed Forces, now therefore be it resolved that the municipality of Brighton endorse that the Ontario government change the access rules to Healthcare Connect to permit the registration of military personnel into the Healthcare Connect system once those Canadian Forces members are provided with a release date, and further, that this motion is circulated to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Health, MPP David Piccini, and all municipalities across Ontario, and the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario for endorsement. Is there any discussion? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I think it's great how Councillor Bateman, his wife, has brought this forward. And it's something that she sees every day. That's what she said at her delegation. And it's something that's been going on. And finally, we might be able to put a stop to it. But I'd like to see an amendment to this a little bit. I think it doesn't go far enough since you're going to go right to Queen's Park with this. We should be talking for all citizens. Citizens have to wait in line. Let's use that expression. It might not be appropriate, but basically with Healthcare Connect, which needs an overhaul itself, but we're not here to discuss that. People move here for different reasons. Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's a job, sometimes it's just to get out of Toronto. But they have to follow that procedure, which is to sit for up to 5 years in some cases, I hear. And this might expedite our military, which I totally support the military, but they're going to be getting into a traffic jam and coming out with after they do get services even after leaving the military, should they need it. They get it from Veteran Affairs, they get it from other sources where the common citizen doesn't. They have to wait in line. So I'm just asking if you could add this to this motion, that it includes all citizens of Ontario. And because if you want to get the Premier's attention, I think he needs to be looking at that, and Healthcare Connect needs to be stepping up too and dealing with this. We have a severe doctor, I'm not going to go in there, but we have a severe medical healthcare problem in this province. And this is great that this is coming forward, but we need to beef it up. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I guess I'll turn it over to Councillor Bateman to see if there's an appetite to amend the motion.
My only concern with it is they're similar but two separate issues. With the military and Healthcare Connect, they're not on the provincial healthcare system, period. With somebody that's on the healthcare system, if you're saying you're living in Etobicoke and you move to Brighton, if you want to have a physician in Brighton or a chance of, you have to de-roster, but that's an option. With the military, they don't have an option. They're stuck in quagmire because they have to deal federally, and the federally doesn't deal with provincial healthcare. So this is really just a step to have the focus on them. I don't disagree. We could at another time ask the province and the other municipalities if there's an appetite where people can de-roster or roster without de-rostering when they already have a doctor. But these are really two completely different issues, but similar. These are folks that are not on the provincial healthcare system. Yes, they do have some access, but Veterans Affairs, it's not the same. Once they leave the military and they de-roster, Veterans Affairs, and I don't want to speak for Dr. White or the case manager that came here, that was my wife. It's a different type of service. When they want doctor service, they go to our emergency room. So they're going to be in Quinte Healthcare or wherever they're living. Majority of them are the Quinte Healthcare. So it's at TMH, Belleville, wherever. That's what they're trying to alleviate with that. The other thing would work, but that's almost a different battle. These folks, once they have that door open and the release date, it's to the emergency rooms. And they have to do all that and figure it out on their own, because once they're done with the case management transition team, that's it. So this is really just the last piece in that puzzle, because they're stuck in that neverland of no help once they get out of there.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask the question as well, how do we deal with interprovincial residents then? I'm thinking it's the same thing, maybe supportive of what Councillor Anderson is saying. When we bring in, you know, when people move from other provinces, I don't know how that system works. Maybe Mr. or Councillor Bateman might have something on that as well. But as I said, it kind of could be a little bit more all encompassing. Like I said, you're right. I think we need to, all municipalities need to connect with the Premier's office and with the Minister of Health to figure some of this out. I think it's a mess. But I don't know if you've got any comment on that as well. It's the same thing. If people are moving from BC, they certainly can't go back there just to see a family doctor, right? They're in the same kind of situation as maybe the military.
I'll field this briefly. After 3 months in Ontario, you can get an Ontario health card if you're a Canadian citizen. And once you get that Ontario health card, you can connect to Healthcare Connect. So there is a 3-month gap. So it is not a dissimilar situation, other than the fact that they do have immediate access to the provincial healthcare system by virtue of being in the provincial healthcare system from wherever they came. So, you know, just like if you go skiing in Quebec and you break your arm, like my daughter did, you get services immediately. And you know, you only pay the $5 for the CD of the X-ray if you really, really want it, which we did. So we did. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I think we have a lot of issues, but I think they're separate issues. So I'm content to see this motion stay as it is. But I think there are other motions that this council needs to be making in the future regarding many things around health care, because we see a crisis everywhere, and not that it's technically our job, but someone's got to start coming up with the ideas and putting pressure on. Just one last request. Can you please ban clicky pens from this side of the council chambers?
We've only got 2 meetings left, Deputy Mayor. We're going to have to suffer through the clicky pens and let the new council deal with whatever they have to deal with. Anything further? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Just to elaborate a little bit on what Councillor Rowley touched on, I'll focus on CFB Trenton, but it would be for any base in Ontario. There is military members there from every province. So if you have a military member from New Brunswick, BC, or wherever, they decide to stay in Ontario, this is going to benefit them. If they go back to a different province, then this doesn't impact. This is about getting our provincial government to make this change to help them, because again, they're stuck in that. The feds can't help them because it's a provincial matter. Province can't help them because they're still fed. So this is just bridging that gap for that group of people.
Go ahead, Councillor LeBlanc.
Sure. So with Councillor Emily Rowley, what she brought up out of province, I hit both. Retired out of the military. I was in Nova Scotia, had my mother-in-law, my son, my wife, and myself. We moved here 30 years ago. And basically we had to go through exactly that same step. Had to wait 3 months to get our healthcare system and everything. But I knew we were coming here almost a year in advance. With the military, if they do it just for the province, which is good, but maybe another motion later on. I agree with this one. I wouldn't amend it. So that for the military, that would be more federal and provincial, that they'd have to look at it right across Canada. That once they know you're going to retire and go to a province, that you could get onto that healthcare system as quick as possible. Because we waited the 3 months, and it was very painful with my mother-in-law that was very ill.
Councillor Anderson.
I think that also confirms what I was saying, that we should, for the benefit of all citizens, be doing this now, not waiting and piecemealing it to the government. The government doesn't listen to bits and pieces. I think you need to go big or go home.
Thank you for that. Councillor LeBlanc.
The thing is with this one, once we get this one and the other municipalities adopted, when it gets to the government, they're going to look at it as a whole. Hopefully they do. And they will.
Sorry,
the provincial
The government of Ontario.
Yeah, they will look at it as a whole. They're very
Well,
intelligent people.
Again, thank you for that, because I believe we should put that in writing.
Thank you for that. Anything further? Counselor Tadman?
Just the fact that I think we should go with the motion there. As soon as you start adding anything, it's like all of us, how much do we actually pay attention? So we're focusing on this for now. There's lots of other ways that you can approach this, but for now, I think we stick with the one.
Thank you for that. I'll echo the deputy mayor's comments when I say these are all issues we should be tackling. And I think let's get this one under our belt. And unfortunately, the new council will have to deal with whatever they deal with. But hopefully, the new council will see their way through to asking for other changes, not just in Healthcare Connect, but how we deliver healthcare and how we attract doctors and all those good things, and mental health concerns and so on and so forth. So go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Fine, I'll go with that because I can see the general consensus is to just move this along, and I will support it as well because it needs to be done. And I was looking for bigger gains, but I'm happy with this as well.
Thank you.
So if you want to call a motion.
I've already called the motion, but I'll call the vote. Any further discussion though? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And our second motion is moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by myself, Mayor Ostrander, whereas it should be easy to do business and make payments with the municipality of Brighton, and whereas online service portals can ease transaction-based friction points, and whereas the presence of online shopping and payment systems are prevalent in the marketplace, now therefore be it resolved that the municipality of Brighton Council direct staff to provide a report to modernize transactions with the municipality to include online systems for purchases and applications, including but not limited to building, planning, and development processes, and further that council directs staff to take the necessary steps to accept alternative payment forms, including credit cards. Is there any discussion? Favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And the notice of motion for this evening, which will come forward at the 19th, September 19th meeting, will be moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Rowley. Whereas attracting primary healthcare providers, including doctors, to Brighton and other small communities has been a difficult task. And whereas the provincial government announced a tuition program to attract nurses to underserved areas of Ontario. And whereas the provincial government is dedicated to reducing red tape. Now therefore be it resolved that the municipality of Brighton Council requests that the government of Ontario amend the rules requiring foreign trained and practicing doctors to undergo strict residency requirements in order to be licensed in Ontario. And further that the government of Ontario develop a similar tuition program to attract family doctors to underserved areas of Ontario. And further that this motion is circulated to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Health, MPP David Piccini, and all municipalities across Ontario and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for endorsement. And as I said, that will come forward at the September 19th meeting. Do I have that date right? Yeah, thank you. There is no unfinished business listed on this agenda. There are no bylaws to be read. We have no reports of advisory committees of council reports, minutes, and council reports. That brings us to reports and minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. The only one is the Codrington Community Association minutes, moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council received the Codrington Community Association meeting minutes for February, March, April, May, June, and July 2022 as presented. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
I have no comments on any of the minutes, but and maybe once again, this is something for a future council to consider, that we receive minutes in a more timely manner than waiting 6 months to read as far back as February.
Thank you for that. I'm sure we can make those requests, keeping in mind that this association really has no strict reporting structure to the municipality other than the fact that it receives significant funds from the municipality, but I understand your request.
May I just make a comment on that? I mean, as in a previous, we extracted a portion of a motion or something, recommendation
Yeah.
from this, and it just kind of comes blank. So sometimes if you have the historicals behind it, it just makes it easier to make some of those decisions.
It sure does. Thank you. Anything further for members of council? For those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. The first is a request from Linda Gladman on behalf of the volunteers of the Brighton Stockings and Santa Sacks for Seniors for financial donation and a heated room or space to store donations. And the motion is moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receive or support the request from Linda Gladman on behalf of the volunteers of the Brighton Stockings and Santa Sacks for Seniors for financial donation and a heated room or space to store donations, a few tables to organize the load at the Santa Sacks from November 1st until December 8th. This space would need to be available for access to drop off the donations as they arrive to designated drop-offs. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
I'd be willing to support this, but I'd want to hear from the appropriate staff member if we have what they're asking for, where it would be, and what their recommendation would be on where we'd store it.
So just for council's information, before we go down that road, I have
Okay.
connected Ms. Gladman with the Smithfield United Church. The United Church Board is not meeting until next week sometime or the week after. So she's now waiting to hear whether they have space. It sounded like the worship leader said that she thought they could move it forward, but there was no guarantee. She's at the behest of her board. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And I was thinking, while Linda was speaking, that perhaps there was a church in that could accommodate. I'm sure that one of them would be able to. I just have a question for the Director of Finance. Normally, we can't approve donations unless they go through the grant and aid process. And I'm wondering if this has been suggested or if we were in receipt of a grant and aid.
Director Whitfield.
Through you, Mayor. No, we did not receive any grant and aid application this year. However, in the past 2 years, because of COVID, there was no staff Christmas party and staff donated the funds for that would, take up or pay for that Christmas party in part to this cause.
Thank you. Just go ahead.
So for myself, if we were going to approve this, or if council was to approve this, I would suggest perhaps a grant and aid application, just so that we follow our guidelines for all donations.
I'm actually wondering if we should defer this until we hear what whether the Smithfield United Church is able to help them. Because we may want to circle back and see if we can provide space if that's not the case. Would that be acceptable to everyone?
So we could clear that up in 2 weeks then, right?
Right.
At our next
Yeah.
council meeting.
It is. So the motion will read that the correspondence from Linda Gladman Stockings for Seniors be deferred to the September 19th, 2022 meeting. Is there a mover? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councilor LeBlanc, thank you. Is there any there's no discussion on deferral, but maybe we'll just have you talk.
Again, I just want to suggest that she apply for a grant and aid as well, because technically we're not supposed to approve it unless there is one. These are two separate issues, space and donation, two
So
different issues.
I see that Ms. Gladman has departed. I wonder if a member of staff would be willing to reach out to her. Director Whitfield, you will?
I'll be happy to.
Okay.
yes.
And let her know that we deferred this based on waiting to hear what the church has to say as well, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Mayor, I think I heard September 21st is the date.
Oh, well, our next meeting is September 19th, so we may have to
She
defer it
may
again.
have to step on some toes.
Right. Thank you for that. Anything further from members of council? It's not debatable. Never mind. All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried.
I do have a comment.
Of course you do.
Thank you.
So get on with it.
Can we appreciate the generosity of our staff for giving up their Christmas party and supporting a good cause?
Like, they gave up their Christmas party based on a pandemic, but we certainly thank them for taking that money and putting it toward a good cause. Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that. Good work, everybody. The next piece of correspondence comes from Monty Burke regarding traffic concerns in the Presqu'île residence area. I did pass around an update to that correspondence just before our meeting, which I have here somewhere too, in which Mr. Burke advises that in consultation with the residents on initiative to reduce the speed, the request is that the speed be reduced from lot 121 to the end of Bay Shore Road. That is the request. So I will read the motion that Council Rowley, it was moved by Council Rowley and seconded by Council Blanc, that Council receive the correspondence from Monty Burke regarding traffic concerns along Bay Shore Road. Is that still your wish?
No, I would like to change that to support after receiving this last bit of information.
And I'm going to be clear that we're supporting the correspondence dated September 5th, the email dated September 5th at 11:24.
Correct.
Just so staff is clear on that. I can do that. Yeah, you bet. And would it be appropriate to direct staff to bring back a report on what the intention is, Mr. Castleman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that would be appropriate.
It was moved by Councilor Rowley, seconded by Councilor LeBlanc, and I've made some changes, so I'll ask you guys if you're okay with that. The council support the correspondence attached here too from Monty Burke regarding traffic concerns along Bay Shore Road, and to be clear, the attachment will be that email that I passed around, and that staff is directed to provide a report to council. You okay with that, Councilor LeBlanc?
Except for the safety concerns. Have you ever driven that stretch of road, Mayor?
Frequently.
Yeah, well, number 21, not that he's a retired minister, but the road narrows for dips, very, very small. And there's always people walking, they're always on the road. So it makes very much sense to reduce the speed there.
Yeah, so we have supported
Yeah.
that motion, which would reduce the speed to 30 from lot 121 all the way down to the point. Yeah. Anything further from members of council? Sorry, Councilor Bateman, go ahead.
I don't want to assume, but with staff, when they bring back the report, not only looking at the speed, but based on what we've seen in here and heard the narrowing of the roads and the curve, they would come back in the report. It would talk about possibly additional signage, narrow road, sharp bend or whatever.
Given that the correspondence requests the 30 kilometers and then notes all the traffic concerns, I would anticipate that staff would want to bring back a fulsome report on traffic calming measures in that area. Because I don't think that the proposed traffic study that we proposed last would cover the Presqu'île area. It's, I think, only for the urban area of the municipality. Mr. Castleman, can you speak to that briefly?
Happy to. This is a pretty isolated incident, and staff indeed will bring forward a fulsome report given the circumstances surrounding this unique area.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of homes in a small area down there, quite frankly. Yeah. Councillor Anderson?
I know it's after Labor Day, but this will take a little time for staff to prepare this and for us to act on it. We had talked about the flashing radar sign and also that also collects data as well, I understand. So perhaps that could be used down there
So
as well.
the report doesn't have to be looking for council's permission. We've supported the correspondence. Staff is aware of what we're supporting, and part of the report can be seeking council direction, and part of the report can be advising council what action has been taken up to that point. So I expect that it will be sort of a twofold report,
Okay.
telling us what has happened so far and asking for council direction on other items.
Okay.
Okay. Anything further? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. It's right behind it. But I don't have a stapler. Thank you. Our final piece of correspondence comes from the Ontario Sheep Farmers. It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council support the request from the Ontario Sheep Farmers to consider some revisions to the dog control bylaw for consideration of livestock guardian animals for the prevention control of predators used by livestock producers. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. We have no FYI correspondence, which brings us to question period. Are there any questions from members of the public? And there's no one on Zoom. Thank you. We have no in-camera session this evening. That brings us to our confirmatory bylaw. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on September 6, 2022. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
Sorry, Mayor, no discussion on that, but I didn't have an opportunity to mention it. I was asked by the two delegates, the case manager and Dr. White, that if that passed, to pass along their heartfelt thanks, because they've been trying and couldn't get it to a certain spot. So they're very grateful for this council listening to the notice of motion. And now that it's been passed, I know they're going to be extremely grateful that it's going up to the next step.
Super. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that the September 6, 2022 council meeting adjourn at 7:57 PM. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried.